He had waited years for this moment. Not just months, years. And when the tournament finally arrived, on home soil, in front of his own country, he watched every single game from the bench. Not because he didn't care, but because his body wouldn't let him play. Alphonso Davies, Canada's captain, Bayern Munich's star, the most recognizable face in Canadian football history. And for 3 group stage matches at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, he was invisible. Now, with elimination on the line, everything changes. To understand what this moment means, you have to go back to the beginning. Canada had never won a game at the World Cup. Not one. For decades, the idea of Canadian football competing on the global stage was treated less like a dream and more like a fantasy. The country was known for hockey, for winter, for politeness, not for football. But a generation of players quietly changed that, and at the center of that generation stood one man. Alphonso Davies was born in a Ghanaian refugee camp and immigrated to Canada as a child. He grew up in Edmonton. He rose through the youth ranks. He signed with Bayern Munich. He became one of the fastest, most dynamic fullbacks in world football. And when Canada qualified for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, their first appearance in 36 years, Davies scored their first goal of the tournament. He wasn't just a player. He was the symbol. So when the 2026 World Cup was announced, hosted jointly by Canada, the United States, and Mexico, the anticipation surrounding Davies and the Canadian national team reached a level this country had never experienced before. Home fans, home stadiums, home pressure. And then, in the spring of 2026, it almost fell apart. Playing for Bayern Munich in a Champions League semifinal, Davies suffered a hamstring injury, serious enough to keep him off the pitch. Serious enough that as the World Cup approached, nobody knew if Canada's captain would play a single minute. He arrived late to camp. He worked with a personal trainer in Munich before joining his teammates. He followed return-to-play protocols. And still, when Canada's opening match against Bosnia and Herzegovina kicked off, Davies was not in the lineup. Canada drew that game 1-1, their first World Cup point ever. Davies watched from the bench. In their second match, Canada faced Qatar. Jonathan David scored a hat-trick, becoming the first Canadian and only the second CONCACAF player to score 3 goals in a single World Cup match. Sile Larin added 2 more. Canada won 6-0, a historic, commanding, statement victory. Davies watched from the bench. And then came the group decider against Switzerland. Canada needed only a draw to top the group and secure home field advantage in Vancouver for the knockout stage. Before the match, Davies reportedly walked up to head coach Jesse Marsch and asked, "Can I get a couple of minutes?" Marsch said no. Canada lost 2-1. They finished second in the group, and they would travel to Los Angeles, not stay in Vancouver for their round of 32 match. But here is where the story gets complicated. After the Switzerland loss, Marsch made a stunning admission. He revealed that Davies had been listed as available, not to actually play, but as a deliberate tactical deception, a decoy. Marsch had used his own captain's presence to force opponents to game plan around a player who was never going to take the field. It was a calculated gamble, and depending on who you ask, either a masterstroke of coaching intelligence or a troubling use of a player's identity as a psychological weapon. Which raises a question that cuts deeper than tactics. When does protecting a player cross the line into using him? Davies himself was measured in his response. He said it was painful, that watching from the sidelines when all you want to do is play football is a particular kind of suffering that is difficult to explain. He had been eager from the first game, more so by the second. By the third, he was asking for 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. He was denied. Now, the knockout stage has arrived, and everything shifts. Canada's opponent is South Africa, Bafana Bafana, a team that has defied expectations at every turn. South Africa finished second in Group A with a record of 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. They were beaten by Mexico in their opener. They drew with Czechia. And then, needing a result against South Korea, they found one. A 1-0 win that sent them to the knockout round for the first time in their history. Like Canada, South Africa has never played in a World Cup knockout match. This will be a first for both nations simultaneously. 2 countries standing on the edge of football history, facing each other, with no experience of what comes next. The only previous meeting between these 2 sides was a friendly in 2007. South Africa won 2-0 in Durban. It is the thinnest of historical footnotes. This match will carry far more weight. For Canada, the challenge is clear. Jonathan David arrives in the knockout stage as one of the tournament's most dangerous forwards. Kyle Larin has been clinical. The attacking output has been undeniable. But the question surrounding this team, the question that has dominated every press conference, every training report, every headline, is the same one it has been since May. Will Alphonso Davies play? Coach Marsch confirmed ahead of the match that Davies is available, fit, ready. What that means in practical terms, starter, substitute, limited minutes, has been left deliberately vague. But the intent is clear. The decoy phase is over. The real Alphonso Davies is ready to return. And the weight of that return is enormous. This is not simply about tactics or team selection. This is about what it means to be the face of a football movement in your own country, to carry the hope of a nation, and to have been physically unable to deliver on that hope for the most important 3 matches of your career. The psychological burden of watching, of waiting, of being used as a symbol even when you couldn't perform. South Africa will not be passive. They have shown throughout this tournament that they are organized, resilient, and capable of winning ugly when they need to. Their defensive compactness has frustrated better-resourced teams. They have already beaten South Korea once this tournament. They will arrive in Los Angeles with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Canada, by contrast, arrives with expectation, with pressure, with a generation of supporters who have waited decades for this, and a captain who has waited 3 weeks just to take the field. History does not hand out second chances easily. For Alphonso Davies, this match against South Africa is not just another 90 minutes of football. It is the chance to finish something. To step onto the same pitch in Los Angeles where he was injured more than a year ago and rewrite that story. To be what Canada needs him to be. Not in theory, not as a decoy, but in reality. He said it himself. He wants to finish what he started. The question now is whether the body